Hey guys, welcome back to Diaries of a 20-something. I'm Paige Marquez, your host, and today we are talking all about job hunting and what it results in and just like the entire process. Because as you guys know, or maybe you don't, graduated college a little bit ago and I was aggressively job hunting for a long time, and it was definitely a horrible process. Hated every second of it. It's like literally the definition of getting your hopes up and then it being destroyed. But I finally got a job. So if you are in the job market and actively searching for jobs and nobody is hiring you, this episode is for you. Hopefully, it'll give you some insight. So stay tuned. So to start off, I just want to talk about how terrible the job market actually is right now. I can't really speak on people who are higher up in their career, like not entry level, but getting a first job is really hard. And I did hear many people tell me before, sometimes it takes a year to get a job out of college. Like I was aggressively job searching for about 6 months. I started, I want to say a month or two before I graduated, and then continued on until about 2 weeks ago, to be honest. The job hunt was just hard. It was really strenuous and really unmotivating and really terrible for my mental health. I have a new sympathy for the unemployed. I really do. Because when you are unemployed and all you want to do is be employed, it is actually the hardest thing. Literally just, I can't even explain to you guys how horrible it was. I think the most important thing when you're job hunting is probably your resume. And the thing about the job market today and the hiring process today is it is entirely done with like AI. So by the time that a real person actually looks at your resume and application, it has already been screened by AI. And that is the problem, because so many great resumes and cover letters and applicants in general just get filtered out because they're not using the right keywords or whatever the reason. I feel like 20 years ago, job hunting was so much easier because you could just show up and meet somebody face to face. I feel like it was just more personable. And while like online applications is like, yeah, I mean, it's convenient, it's nice, they're all in one spot, but at the same time, it's like so much harder to get a job, I think. And that is kind of what I wanted to touch on, because like I said, your resume is very important, but if it doesn't have the right keywords, it's not going to be seen. And it's so frustrating once you like crack it and figure out, okay, this is what they want to see. This is like what they don't want to see. This is what I should put in this resume. I'm just going to go through a little guide of my resume, because the thing is, I have multiple. I think I had about 6 different resumes, all with different experience and all like highlighting different things and focusing on different things. I had one for content creation. I had one for writing. I had one for editing. I had one for fashion and stuff like that. I just like had a bunch. And then I had one with like everything. So I'm going to actually put a screenshot of my resume right here for you guys so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. This is the one that I use about 90% of the time. And if you notice, the top, the location says Warren, New Jersey. This is not something that I was doing for that long. However, I did a bunch of research and I found that when you're applying for entry-level positions in a different state or city that you're not local to, often your applications won't even be considered because there's such a big pool of applicants so similar to you that could live down the street or something. So that's what I did, because I knew I wanted to relocate to the New York City area. And so I put my grandma's city and state, which is about 45 minutes from New York City. So yeah, but like the longest time I didn't even have a city and state on my resume. I didn't think it was relevant because everything's online. I figured like an address is more for when they used to send mail, but it's actually not. Through my research, when I was job hunting, I actually found that you want to see where you are now and if you would need to relocate. By the way, if anyone's in HR watching this and if I get anything wrong, please correct me in the comments. I don't want to mislead anybody, but this is just my experience. So yeah, like if you want to like relocate to a different city or something and you don't live in that city, literally just put the city and state in your resume. However, don't do this if you really are not ready to pick up your things and move like the next week. That's what I'll say, because that's kind of what happened to me and it was kind of overwhelming. So just keep that in mind. So underneath that, you'll see that I have my LinkedIn profile and my website. my e-portfolio. Which, yeah, these are just like additional links. Normally in an application, there's a place to put a link for these things, but I just like to put it on the resume too, just to have it all there. And then obviously contact information is obviously really important. Next thing, which I actually heard people struggle with quite a bit, I'm on this Reddit page for resumes, which actually is so helpful. And if you have any like additional questions, I recommend put them in there because people are so helpful in there. I've seen a lot of people question about this in that forum or in that community or whatever. Your summary should not be more than 2-3 sentences. Because if you think about it, a resume ideally is 1 page. And if you spend so much space doing a summary, that leaves less space to add in your experience and your bullet points and skills and all that beautifulness. So that is what I will say about a summary. I think they're very specific to yourself. However, here's a little quick tip. If you literally copy and paste your entire resume into ChatGPT and then say, write a summary about myself, it'll do it. I kind of like altered mine from the ChatGPT version because I had no idea what to put. Just like keep it simple. And then when it comes to experience, I always do most recent on top and then go down to least recent towards the bottom. I think that's a common general rule for resumes. I could be wrong, but I feel like that's what everyone's always told me. But going back to what I said earlier about like tailoring your resume, like this is what I'm talking about. If you are actively looking for like big girl jobs, you should not just have one resume. Tailor the experience to what you're applying for. Like I always keep the most recent the same. I never really mess around with that. But, for some resumes, I'll put in the podcast. For other ones, I won't. I only do it when I think it's going to benefit me. And that's like kind of how you have to think about your experience. Like if you're applying for, I don't know, let's just say a social media job and you have no social media in your experience. Are you going to expect to be called back? No. Or if you're applying for a writing job and all you have is social media experience, like no. And even if you do only have specific experience that like doesn't match, use the bullet points to show how it still applies and show how it's still transferable. Eventually it'll all come together and fit, but you have to be tailoring your resume. If you're not tailoring your resumes, you're not going to get a job. And I so believe that, like to my core after all of this. Backpacking off of that, your skills on your resume also need to be tailored every single time. And I'm not kidding. Every single job application you do, change around the skills. I was like exclusively applying with LinkedIn, and every job posting, there is a set of skills that they put on the job post, and even like that they type in throughout the job post and stuff like that. Literally make it so exact. Like I'm serious. I mean, if you don't have the skill, don't put it in, but literally just copy every single skill that is on the job posting into your resume, and then it probably won't get filtered out by AI. Job hunting now is kind of like a game. And then like obviously, I don't really have any awards or achievements, but you could put that in your resume as well. I mean, I think you should if you do. It's kind of embarrassing. I don't have any achievements or awards. I'll let you know though. Another section you could add is projects. With the one resume I have with my podcast in it, that is under a different sector. It's under projects because it is a project. It's not really a job. I don't get paid for this. Like I run it myself. I'm not like reporting to anybody. It's a project. It's a passion project. I put projects right under experience, but I think when it comes to putting in stuff like a podcast in your resume, definitely just be careful about it because you don't want to give it to someone that's going to use it against you. Like the job I have now, I didn't apply with my podcast, but I told them that I had one because I wanted to explain what I've been doing for the last 3 months since I graduated. They were super excited to hear about it and talk about it and learn more about it, but some jobs won't. I'm sure that some jobs I applied for have watched my podcast and they're probably like, this isn't for us, which is fine, whatever. I got hired anyway. Put in your education, put in when you started college, when you left college, any relevant clubs you were in or like organizations. I would only really put them in though if you had like a leadership position or something. Another thing with adding in your education though is I have heard many times like throughout like college advisors and stuff to not put your GPA unless it's above a 3.4. I don't know how dated that is, but I'm 90% sure that is still a thing. So I didn't have my GPA in my resume because my GPA was not that high. But I think honestly, like experience matters way more. Put your specialization. If you had any journalism, you had to specialize by like junior year. And you started when you ended, all of that. And definitely put also the type of degree you got, like Bachelor of Science or Bachelor of Arts. I know for journalism, it can be either one. And then also, like, with resumes and stuff, not that I've ever seen any, like, horrible ones, but just make sure there's no typos. Make sure everything makes sense. Like all the fonts are the same and all the letter sizes are the same or at least consistent. Like, don't focus so much on the actual stuff that matters that you let the smaller stuff slide, because you don't want someone to be looking at your application and then it be like, oh, like, wow, like she has such great experience, but like she can't spell. You know what I mean? Especially if you're in a journalism field. I actually have a funny story. With every job, you pretty much have to submit a cover letter. So I have written hundreds of cover letters. For this one cover letter, I actually misspelled the magazine every time. I was wondering why they weren't getting back to me, and I looked over it and I was like, oh, well, maybe it's because I didn't even spell it right once. It's like little things like that. Like I said, I've written hundreds of cover letters at this point. I wasn't really writing cover letters until I was looking for a big girl job. And the thing with cover letters is that cover letters are a great way to showcase your strengths and make up for the weaknesses that you have, whether it be explaining the weaknesses or, like I said, like on your resume earlier, like tailor all of your experience, make it transferable to like matter. Do the same exact thing with your cover letters. Like if you're not 100% qualified for a position, and you probably won't be for a lot of them because the way that entry-level jobs are asking for 5 years of experience now, it's insane. Use your cover letter to prove to them why they should hire you, why they should even give you a chance. Explain how your experience has prepared you for this. Say what you love about the company and say like what you want for yourself. It's just a way to really be like, okay, this is more of who I am and this is what I want to do and this is what I can provide. You know what I mean? Like, also try and keep it to a page. The only time I ever let a cover letter go over a page is when it's not submitted like as a document. It's when they give you like a text box to include your answer like that. I'll let it go over a page. But if it's a document, I stick to one page, just like your resume. So once you have all your resumes and cover letters and templates and everything like that, like once you are pretty secure in that, it's time to start job hunting. Like I said, I only really used LinkedIn to apply. I just liked how it was attached to my profile. Whenever I applied to a job, they could look at my profile. I just liked that. But yeah, there's many websites like this, like LinkedIn, Indeed, Monster. Use those to apply. I just like LinkedIn. But also like company websites. Like I know for me, Hearst Magazines is a really big company that owns like some of the biggest magazines in the world. And I've always wanted to write for them. So even now, I still do have their notifications on. So I get an email like once or twice a week with like new job openings. Like I'm not actively job searching right now, but when I am again, I can always go back to that. And sometimes you can like filter them out to location. Sometimes you can filter them out to like experience level. Most of the time you can't, but at least you like are the first to know, because a lot of times with LinkedIn, a job is posted on LinkedIn and within like a couple hours, there's already hundreds of applicants. But it's also like networking. Networking is everything. And I don't even mean like networking on LinkedIn, because having like 500 connections on LinkedIn, 600, 700, whatever, it literally doesn't matter, because if those connections don't actually translate to real connections you have in your life, then they're not going to be able to help you. End of story. Kind of like Instagram followers, I guess. Like probably only know like couple hundred of my Instagram followers and the people I'm following. Some of the people I follow, I've never had a conversation with in my life. They're just like friends of friends that I feel weird not following. But another thing I've noticed with job applications is a lot of them ask for a referral, or like if you know somebody that works there, like did someone tell you about this job? Stuff like that. Referrals, I think, are the key to getting pushed to the front of the line. I actually had a referral for a couple jobs. And not that I knew anybody that worked for the company or anything. Like, I didn't know anyone, but for the jobs that I really, really, really wanted, going to the company's page, then scrolling through all the people, trying to find the person with the job description that is closest to the one I'm applying. And I just reached out to them and I was like, hey, like I'm really interested in this job. You kind of have to like form a little bit of a connection with them. Ask them about the job first. Don't just like text them and be like, hey, can I use you as a referral? Like they're never going to say yes to that. But like just try and form a connection with them. And then a a lot of times they'll offer it, or like you can kind of hint at it and be like, you're like, hey, like, do you mind if I add you as a referral? Most people will be fine with it. It's more just you don't want to do it without you telling them. Keep your social media clean and updated. Listen, if you have like a drink in your hand at a nice bar on your Instagram, fine. If every single Instagram post is including alcohol or partying or minimal clothing, then you need to rethink, especially when you're job searching. The ones that have been here a while, I actually privated my 4th of July vlog because, you know, there was alcohol in it. And while I'm job searching, I don't want that attached to my name as something I did so recently. Like, it's not like anything happened, but clean it up. Keep it clean. I screenshotted my Instagram profile and I sent it to ChatGPT and I was like, what comes to mind when like get my Instagram or something? And it was like nothing negative. But I also use my Instagram for professional reasons as well. I have a link tree. It's where I promote my podcast, all my writing pieces that get published and stuff like that. So mine's always been kind of both. And I like to mix professional and personal into a sense because one of my jobs, podcasting, is about my personal life. So it's just finding that balance between personal and professional and how to make them together with them both working for either group. And then on LinkedIn, stay as active as you can on LinkedIn. Not saying you have to be posting every day, but definitely just like be checking in with your friends, comment on their stuff, like their stuff. When I was job searching, I was on LinkedIn all day, every day. Whether that be scrolling or like looking at other people or actively applying for jobs, I was always on LinkedIn. And it became like kind of an obsession thing because when you're job hunting so aggressively, it becomes a game. It becomes addicting because you want a job so bad and nobody's going to hire you. So you're like, this one, this one, this one, this one. I mean, I remember one day I banged out 30 job applications in one day, which is insane. Talk about efficiency. I was like double using cover letters. Like, I don't recommend that every day, but towards the end of my job search, I was definitely applying for like at least 20 jobs a day for sure. Like every field is different, but in some fields, it is relevant to use your personal social media accounts as experience. You know, like if you're applying for a social media job and you happen to have a bigger following on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, YouTube, use that to your advantage. Just be smart about it. If you want to use your TikTok to promote yourself and promote how good you are at digital marketing and like everything like that, just take down the stuff that you wouldn't want them to see. You can always put it back up. Just like take it down for now. Archive it. But if you're lucky enough to get an interview, which is really hard to do, props to anyone who's able to do it. I wish there was like a conversion rate, like every X number of job applications equals an interview. And I thought there was. I figured like every 100 job applications I applied, I'd get like one interview. That was incorrect. I actually, throughout my entire job search, I acquired one interview. One brand asked me for an interview and somehow I got the job, which is insane. Before I was like, there's no way my first interview is going to end up being my job. And then that's exactly how it happened. But when it comes to prepping for an interview, and I think like a big reason why I did get the job is because my first interview was over the phone. So when I was on the phone with her, I was already very knowledgeable about the brand and about the store itself and what I could bring to the table. I researched the brand, I just made myself very familiar with what the brand is, when it started, like how is it run? Look at the Google reviews, you know what I mean? Literally just research it until there is nothing left to find on the internet about it. A lot of times you won't know who you're interviewing with, but if you can, research them. And then when it comes to like interview questions, there's this website called Glassdoor. I think it only really works for bigger companies. Basically, a bunch of employees can go on and talk about the job itself. It gives you good insight on like job satisfaction and like pretty much everything like that. But there's also a section for each company and people will actually post the actual interview questions that they've been asked. And they'll also put like the title that they interviewed for. So that's a really good way to prepare, I think. So I would do that. Or like, you know, if you just know people like older in the general fields that you're in, I would ask them. But preparing for interviews has 90% to do with research and 10% with confidence. I think most first interviews are remote or over the phone or over Zoom or whatever. Mine was over the phone. It wasn't over Zoom. So I would say to prepare for them, I had like a cheat sheet for my first interview. I just basically word vomited on a Word document and kept it in front of me with like all my relevant experience, my management style, my passions, my projects, like who I am as a person. I just had it all laid out so I wouldn't have to like think too quick on my feet. You can be as social as you want, but interviews are scary. I still recommend, regardless if it's remote or not, I still feel like you should physically prepare yourself in the sense of actually getting out of pajamas, because I think that when you're sitting in pajamas, you're more likely to slouch, which makes you less confident. Like, I think if you actually get ready or like put some kind of effort into the way that you look, you will perform better. And it's actually funny. I was on FaceTime with my sister before my interview. I was like doing like the Superman stance on FaceTime with my sister before my interview because I was so nervous. And apparently if you like stand like a superhero for like, I don't know, a couple minutes, I think, before you have to like do an interview or like a presentation or like whatever, it like improves performance by like 100%, I think. That statistic could be extremely wrong, and I'll let you. But also, like, when I had my second interview, it was in person. And tailor your interview outfit towards the job you're applying for. Like, if you're applying for like a job at like a Fortune 500 company or something, definitely be very business formal. But if you're applying for a job at like a retail brand, you want to incorporate some aspect of fashion into it. You want to make sure that you look like you are actually at least interested in fashion. So I would say tailor your outfits for the job. Also important during an interview to make sure that you're asking the interviewer questions. I know this may seem kind of nerve-wracking, especially when you really want the job and you don't want to seem like difficult or anything like that. And that's what I was always worried about. But I noticed that it actually makes you seem a lot more interested. Just ask questions about the role, who you would report to, like immediate priorities, what does success look like in the role? There's so many you could ask, but it is different based on what field you're in and what job you're interviewing for and all that. But overcoming interviewing anxiety is horrible. And the thing is, I'm a journalism major, as many of you guys know, or was. So, and a lot of times in my journalism classes, I would have to write like news stories and stuff, and I'd always have to interview people. It doesn't matter if I'm being interviewed or interviewing. I am a nervous wreck about it. I don't know why, but I just am. And both of my interviews, they were pretty casual. They weren't like super serious. It wasn't like super nerve-wracking, like it was very just like person to person, cool, chill conversation, which I do a lot better with that. I think anybody would. When it comes to like formal interviews, I've never had something where it's like super horrifying, but I think the tips still apply. Just make sure you're dressed appropriately. Just try and have a cheat sheet if you can. I know if it's in person, that might be difficult, but it's all about preparation. I think it's also important after an interview to always follow up with them as well. I know with me, that's what I did. I sent her a text pretty soon after, no longer than 20 minutes after the first initial phone call interview. And I was like, thank you so much for your time. This opportunity is really exciting for me. I can't wait to talk to you about it more face to face. Just like things like that, And then I texted her again the day before the in-person interview because it was about a week and a half later. And I was like, hey, I'm just confirming for tomorrow. Very excited to meet you. Just like reiterating how excited I was for the position. And she confirmed. We had the in-person interview, and then it was with her and her partner. So like the two owners of the brand. And then the one partner was like, we're really interested, sleep on it and let us know in the morning if you want the job. So next morning I texted them and I was like, I would love the job. And the rest is history. And my first day is actually on Saturday, which is so exciting. I have to figure out what to wear, but I'm really excited. With all of this job hunting and stuff, rejection is like such a big part of it. You're in college, you're doing a great job in college, you're getting published a lot, more than most people your age, and then you get out, you're applying for jobs, and nobody is even offering you an interview or giving you any feedback, and it can really start destroying your confidence, especially if it's something you really want. And I was noticing like some of my other friends who did get jobs immediately after college, just like looking at their lives and being like, why? Like, what am I doing wrong? And I'm going to say most of the time you're not doing anything wrong. And if you are, it really just comes down to keywords on your resume. I know that's so stupid, but it's true. That is literally just how the world works now. And while AI can make our lives easier, it can also make our lives extremely difficult, like in job hunting, for example. However, I did hear something on that Reddit forum actually a couple of weeks ago, which I found interesting. Most of the time, you don't even get a rejection, they just never reach out to you. But this one person got a rejection email and then replied back to it and said, like, what kind of feedback could you offer? And they actually replied and asked him for an interview. So I don't know. I've never done that. Maybe you guys could try that. I just never thought of it because like all the emails, they're like external emails. They obviously like weren't written by a person. Going back to like the confidence thing, you just really start doubting yourself. And it can be really sad and depressing. I was actually entering into pretty extreme depressive state right before I got a job because I wasn't getting a job. I started to get like really upset. It was all I could think about. I was just like locking myself in my room all hours of the day and crying and having breakdowns and just being like really upset and like disappointed in myself and like not knowing what I was doing wrong. It was awful. But then I got a job. So came at the right time. You just have to keep reminding yourself. Like, I think at this point I have put in, definitely over 1,000 applications for sure, or close to that. And if you're not getting called for interviews, if you're getting interviews but not getting jobs, just know that you are not the only one in this boat. And especially in entry-level positions, it is so competitive and so hard to stand out against other people. And even the fact that, like I said earlier, entry-level jobs are requiring years of experience, and it doesn't make any sense. The job market is just horrible right now, but it's just what you have to do to break into your field. Unfortunately, job hunting is not what it was 20 years ago, and I feel like knowing the ins and outs of my experience might help shed some light on your current experience or your future experience or whatever. God knows what it's going to look like in a couple years from now, but it's horrible. But it's also very rewarding because once you do get a job, it's like on the moon. I was on FaceTime with my sister earlier and she was like, I can't believe you start work on Saturday. I was like, I'm so excited. And she was like, that's weird, but like, I'm so excited. And if you are one of those people that's sending out hundreds of applications a week and not gaining any traction, just know you aren't the only one. Most of the time has nothing to do with your skills or qualifications and more to do with keywords and how many people actually applied. I had LinkedIn Premium while I was job searching, and you can actually see how many people applied and like what experience level they are. There are like an even decent amount of senior level applicants applying for entry level jobs. And it's just hard to compete. The competition in the job field is insane. I know it varies by field, but you just have to stay as positive as possible and not beat yourself up too much about it. If you guys have any other related experiences that you want to share, or if you're in HR and have any tips for anybody watching, comment them below. I'd love to see them. Definitely stay tuned for next week because we're going to be talking all about imposter syndrome and just embracing general change, which is such a key part of my life right now. Thank you so much for watching. Like, share, and subscribe. And this was Diaries of a 20-something, episode 11.